Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the NTPEP Audit Program webinar. Right, we have presenters for this webinar: Matt Blumen, our NTPEP Program Manager; Robert Sarsanella, NTPEP Auditor; Chris Peoples. Actually, Chris is not able to make it on the call, but we have Cable here with North Carolina DOT, Steve Ingram, Alabama DOT, and Heather Hall with Tennessee DOT. And now I will hand it over to Matt Blumen.
Good afternoon, East Coast, and still morning for the West Coasters. See some people are still trickling in, so I'm going to give it a second here. All right, for those joining in, we're just giving this one more second for the rest of the little group to trickle in here. We're still getting some attendees joining. All righty, so we're going to go ahead and get started here. So again, I'm Matt Blumen. I'm a NTPEP Program Manager. I manage the audit programs. We're also going to have Robert Sarsanella, who is one of the NTPEP contracted auditors who retired from the Texas DOT. Cabell Garvey is going to be filling in for Chris Peoples to give a perspective on North Carolina's usage of the NTPEP programs. Stephen Ingram will be giving Alabama's perspective on using the NTPEP programs, and Heather Hall is with us to give a little recant from Tennessee DOT's usage as well. So a little overview for what our presentation is going to cover. First is for the audit programs, we're going to talk about what is one of the NTPEP audits and why are they necessary for states. Go over some of the benefits and purposes, and discuss the audit programs themselves and the quality management systems that are reviewed during. Part of the State Transportation Agency's responsibilities is covered by CFR 637, and we'll touch base on some of those excerpts. And the Federal Highways Policy for QC testing results and acceptance falls under that as well, and we'll touch base on those. As part of the audit programs, we have several documents that come into play. One of those is the committee work plan. The next is the specification for that product, and all of the supporting AASHTO and ASTM reference standards that are used either for testing or as part of the products. We also have NTPEP Standard Practice SP01 that is covers all of the audit programs, and this basically lists the outline of each of the audit programs and works in conjunction with the work plan. We'll go through the audit process and the requirements of the audits, and talk a little bit about DataMine, which is where we house our information and how the states can utilize the information there. Then we'll go through some state testimonials from North Carolina, Alabama, and Tennessee on how those states utilize the NTPEP audit programs. And at the end, we'll have some time reserved for questions. I believe the chat should be enabled. Van, did you make sure the chat's enabled? So we'll save some time at the end for questions. If you have questions along the way through the presentation, you can enter them into the chat. And then you can also raise your hand to be unmuted at the end of that. And we can also answer questions after the presentation if you have any.
If you raise your hand, I'll be able to enable the chat function for you. And you will also be able to speak.
Okay, first I'd like to discuss the role of NTPEP and the audit programs that are in place. NTPEP or NTEP is the acronym for the AASHTO's National Transportation Product Evaluation Program. It's a technical service program provided by AASHTO for use by state DOTs. NTPEP assists states with their choosing or approval of highway products and manufacturers. There are many benefits to states and manufacturers who utilize the services that NTPEP offers. A few of those are providing cost-effective product and facility evaluations by eliminating duplication of product testing and facility auditing across multiple states, while also eliminating duplication of efforts by manufacturers. NTPEP provides a great opportunity for partnership between states and DOTs and facilitates the collaboration through these programs. This webinar will focus on the NTPEP technical committees that offer manufacturing facility audits. While the audit programs differ in the technical nature of the manufacturing audit, they all follow the same basic format to provide consistent information to states. The audits all consist of an evaluation of the facility's quality management system and provide annual on-site audits. Most of the audit programs have random products sampled during the audits, but this is one major difference between each of the technical committees that govern the audit programs. The resulting documentation that we'll discuss in a few minutes from each facility audit is made available to all state personnel through NTPEP's online database, which is called DataMine. One important thing that NTPEP does not do is approve or certify manufacturers or products. The resulting audit reports and supporting documentation can be used by DOTs according to their own specifications or requirements to establish qualified producer lists. And even for those states that don't utilize producer lists, DataMine can be an organized repository for making decisions on selecting qualified producers and giving you a greater degree of confidence and reducing your risk. So jumping a little bit to the requirements listed by the Federal Highway Administration. The Federal Aid Policy Guide contains this section in CFR 637. This outlines the requirement for a quality assurance program within each state highway department. It sets the backdrop of why we're talking about the audit programs today. Audits or a physical presence in facilities are a great resource for DOTs, but can be an issue with personnel. NTPEP can serve as the state's designated agent that is highlighted in bullet D. This allows for DOTs to use NTPEP where there is no longer the resources available to conduct their own facility audits. It reduces the need to add risk by relying solely on manufacturers' QC data as a form of acceptance. So what about using contractor QC results for acceptance? Are you accepting that level of risk, or is something else available that can take place of that risk and provide the greater level of confidence? This statement here is taken verbatim from the Federal Highways website. It details that although a manufacturer is required to perform quality control, it is not allowable for a state DOT to use that quality control result as acceptance without some sort of validation in place. This is where NTPEP can come into play for your state. NTPEP can serve as the state's quality verification, which is the validation in this, as part of the quality assurance function. The NTPEP audit programs have the following benefits to the states. Collaboration on each technical committee's work plan is developed with input from states and manufacturers. Although the states have final say in all of the voting rights, this collaboration guarantees the utmost technical expertise is available to each program. Reducing the need for in-house testing or audits. There may still be a desire or need to test products periodically or have additional job level requirements in place, but the NTPEP audit programs create a great baseline. And finally, access to verification of manufacturers that are either out of state or otherwise wouldn't look to become a supplier for that state. This only increases available suppliers and works to benefit the state for bidding processes. So here's a list of the current NTPEP audit programs. Looking at this list, the asphalt binder suppliers and composite concrete reinforcement programs are the newest to NTPEP, with asphalt binder audits starting this year in 2022 and composite concrete reinforcement starting next year in 2023. To give an idea of the quantity of manufacturing facilities available to each state for each of these programs, I wanted to list out the number of audits for each of these programs in 2022. Corrugated metal pipe had 24 audits. Elastomeric bridge bearing pads had 11 audits. Geotextiles had 20 domestic and 29 international audits. Geosynthetic reinforcements had 4 domestic and 7 international audits. Guardrail had 10 audits. Reinforcing steel, which covers a variety of products, including rebar, wire, welded wire mesh, 7-wire strand, and stainless steel bar, had 81 audits. And thermoplastic pipe had 59 audits. So you can see from those numbers that you're given a very great number of facilities to choose from to choose your products. So we're going to use Guardrail as an example here. And let's talk about what's considered for a NTPEP audit program to better help you understand why it will work for your state. So using Guardrail, do DOTs use the same product specification? The answer to that is yes, M180. Are products and material requirements generally the same for all DOTs? Typically, might be some small differences between states, but by and large, they're the same requirements. And although acceptance may vary, the fabrication of the product is standard. So basically what we have here is the ability to create a uniform program across states, and we'll get a little bit into that here with the documents required. With each audit program, a work plan is developed, and we use the standard specification to cover the specific requirements for participating by manufacturers in the program, including what is required in their quality system, the required inspection and QC, an outline of what takes place during the on-site audit, and any testing that may be conducted by the NTPEP designated lab as part of that program. The work plan works in conjunction with NTPEP standard practice SPA1 for conducting audits and testing. The specifics for each work plan is based on the product specification. For each audit program, the depth of that program will be different depending on the product specification and what's available. For Guardrail, we use AASHTO M180. And NTPEP is a great resource for feeding back to the standards development, because what we're seeing in the field is conveyed back to AASHTO's Committee on Materials and Pavement, and adjustments to standards can be made based on what we're actually seeing in the field, which gives a great collaboration effort. The NTPEP audit process for all audit programs is described in SPA1. This standard practice is utilized as a baseline for conducting all of our audits. It covers auditing requirements, testing criteria, and is used along with the specific work plans for each of the audit programs. So the audit programs are based on requirements used by a majority of the DOTs and based on the product specification. With this information in mind, the audits will always strive to cover the most common aspects of requirements by states. When utilizing a NTPEP audit program, additional requirements to manufacturers can be enforced at a state-specific level. in addition to the NetPEP participation. But the audits are a great baseline, again, for establishing that quality. Robert Sarsanella is now going to describe the audits themselves and the information that is gathered for DOTs to view from those audits.
Thank you, Matt. For the audit process, we're going to cover the following areas: what takes place in a pre-audit, what takes place in the actual on-site audit, and then also what takes place in the post-audit. So under the pre-audit, we take a look and review the facility's quality manual, and that's done every 5 years. So when facilities are wanting to get on the program, they submit the information, it's reviewed in detail, and then stay on the program every 5 years is when we go back and do a full review. So that's basically covers the pre-audit. On an on-site, we actually go out to the facility and we review the facility's manufacturing processes, any testing or inspection. Once again, it's based purely upon what the product is that we're dealing with and how the work plan is structured. And we'll take a look at their equipment, and also, as with any good government audit, we're pouring through the documentation that they maintain. And then finally, for the post audit, we do the closeout of the audit. We create all the reports and make those available within DataMine, and we post those results out there. And all of those results are located in the secure website, which is DataMine. Now, for the pre-audit in more detail, when we go ahead and review the quality manual, what we're looking for are the following items. And these items are mentioned in detail in the document Matt mentioned earlier, which is our guidance document for audits, SP01. So they're required to have the following, which is kind of similar to what some of you may be doing with manuals that you're requiring of these manufacturers in the past. We're looking for such things as the mission statement and descriptions of the different positions and how they're structured as far as who reports to who. We get into the personnel training and competency evaluations. And this is done on the people involved with doing a direct record testing that backs their certifications. We also check to see that they're doing some form of internal audits and management reviews, because we see that this is a big benefit. It's something people always want to do, but seldom get a chance to really set aside the time. We also evaluate their corrective action procedures, and then we start looking in more detail at the lab equipment, what sort of plan they have for calibrating, verifying, and standardizing this equipment, and the documentation that they go ahead and maintain in their frequency. Also, we take a look at how they record and maintain information for material that they get in, how they maintain it for the product as it goes through the manufacturing, and then any testing or inspection that's done, how they maintain those results. Next, we'll talk about the on-site audit. Okay, so this is when we're actually at the facility. So audits are facility specific. A company may have multiple locations, and each audit is done site specific. So when we go there, we're really looking at the performance. We've evaluated their quality manual. We've looked at what they said they do. Now we're out there to see, are they doing it properly? So we're looking for their techniques and the detail to make sure that they cover what they say in their manual, as well as what the requirements are, the work plan, and also the specifications. And we're looking at that, and kind of combined with all of that is looking in detail at the equipment that they have available to make sure that the equipment is properly calibrated, in proper working order, and that they're using the equipment properly in accordance with the specifications. And then we have an informational component of the audit, and we note the products that the manufacturer currently produces. Now, they may have the ability to provide quite a few products, but we're looking at what are you currently producing during the period of time that we're performing the audit. We're also looking to make sure that whatever they do produce, that they're keeping up with the standard specifications and that they're using the proper and most current ones. And then we get into the quality management records that they keep on site. So we're looking at any audits that they do, the calibrations, verifications that they maintain, management reviews that they would be doing, any corrective actions that they've had while they're doing this, along with test data and all of that. And so we're looking at the records in that kind of detail. Next, what we're looking at when we're at the facility is any inspection or testing personnel records that they maintain, as well as how the technician operates. So first we look at their training to make sure that they've been trained properly, or that they have and documented training on what they've are set to do, as well as something that's kind of new to some facilities, which is competency evaluations, which is nothing more than making sure that somebody is going at least annually to verify that they're still competent to do those tests. Then we start getting more into the products. So now we're into the fabrication stage, and we're looking at each of the processes that take place, and we're looking at how they maintain the identity of materials, the raw materials that come in all the way through the stages of fabrication to the finished product going out the door. And then finally, we are looking at their quality control inspection and testing records. We try to make sure that the records have the proper detail and that they're covering the information that they need to document, as well as the frequency of testing and inspections. A lot of times the test methods will tell you what to do, but will not tell you how often to do it. And that's where the work plans come in handy, giving you that detail for most of the programs that we have out there. And finally, the auditor looks at all of that, and with respect to how it relates to the manual. The big thing that's involved with the on-site audit is traceability. And we can't emphasize this enough. We're looking at what they do for all the items that they purchase, because the items they purchase have to come in and they have to be identified some way. So we're looking at how they identify incoming product. We also look how they continue to maintain that identity through all stages of fabrication. Some of them may bring it in with a certain ID number and then translate that into a number that they utilize in-house, and we make sure that the traceability, their records show you how it started off with this number, but then was transitioned to this other number. And then when they go ahead and ship stuff out, we're looking at the identification and the documentation for the items that they furnish to make sure, once again, that identities can be followed all the way on through. Now, one thing that is important is that NTPEP does not verify Buy America, okay? Buy America is wholly a DOT function. And that's because Buy America requirements may vary from state to state, and it is the responsibility of the manufacturer to comply with the requirements for each state transportation agency that they're dealing with. And so it's the manufacturer's responsibility that they get the DOTs the information they're looking for. What we're doing with NTPEP is making sure that they have traceability, that they have documents, and they have ways of keeping up with the identity, because that's the information you're eventually going to be look at. But once again, only the DOT can address Buy America to meet the CFR requirements. And NTPEP can only verify and show that they have a traceability system. And part of the audit for right now, pretty much all but one, we are taking samples. And we take random samples for testing. And those samples are obtained during the audit and designated during the audit. They're marked up. Here's an example of a sample of coil taken that could be used for guardrail. Of course, you can see it's marked with M180. This coil could easily be used to make corrugated metal pipe as well. But we take samples of the material, and we're taking samples of the coil in this case because the coil, you can take samples that have not been adulterated in any way to where they may have been work hardened or anything along that line. So we're able to take it and determine whether or not the base materials is meeting the requirements of M180 specifications. And then those samples are marked up by the auditor and they're sent along to the NTPEP designated laboratory who tests it and then furnishes a result back to the auditor. And the results are reviewed by the auditor and processed onto DataMine. And so now we've done the audit and we've secured the samples. So let's talk about the audit results and the data that we get. Okay, so the immediate result of the audit is you're going to get an audit report and either a conformance or a compliance report, which is the testing of the product. Conformance means that we take a sample and test it and see if it meets minimum requirements and specification. Compliance or comparison testing is to verify that the test actually compares well, because the manufacturer also does testing as well. And we put those together. And then if there's any corrective action reports, we have that. There's markings available to you depending upon the product, and also compliance authentication. The compliance authentication is available to the facility as long as they remain active in the program and they are found compliant. So the DOTs, it's important to note with the next bullet point that we have there is that the DOTs are responsible for establishing their own criteria for product acceptability. Just because a manufacturer says their products are NTPEP compliant does not mean it's acceptable to a DOT. You guys still have the final call in your process for accepting material at the field. We're just trying to give you a group of manufacturers who are doing what they say they're doing. And then the complete audit results are out there and they're made available on the web-based database that we have out there, which is DataMine. It's password protected. And Matt's going to go into a lot of detail with that right now.
So this is a little snapshot of what a manufacturer's facility looks like inside of DataMine. We have two main pages that you'd see when you're looking into a facility. And then there's also pages that have summaries and easily are filterable for finding compliant facilities, whether it's by product or a facility in general. So this view here is of the facility information tab. This page will list out the contact information for the facility, basic production capabilities, and have the files for their quality manual and other information depending on the program, such as markings for guardrail or for plastic pipe, the stub results. The second page in the facilities view is the audit information tab. And this is where you'll find all the documentation that came out of the audit that Sars outlined in the previous slides. This includes the final audit report with any findings from the audit, nonconformities that trigger a corrective action report from the manufacturer to address those findings, test results for any samples taken during the audits, and the compliance authentication certificate. Some of the programs also have additional files for markings if we list them out separately. So there's a good amount of information that you can click through and find without even getting into the audit report. But when you click into that audit report, you're going to get a lot of information. The documents here can only be viewed when you're logged in as a state. Anyone with NTPEP staff can assist you when setting up your account or ensuring that you have the correct access to these areas. So let's move on to some approaches that a few of your peers have taken to utilize NTPEP audit programs in their states. So I'm going to hand off the mic to Cabell Garvey of North Carolina here.
Thank you. I'm Cabell Garvey, Manufactured Products Engineer for North Carolina DOT, standing in for Chris Peoples, who couldn't be here today due to a conflict. North Carolina has been involved with NTPEP since the beginning, and we feel our experiences will help folks to understand some of the benefits of the program and the hurdles to implementing the NTPEP audit program in your states. Benefits of the NTPEP programs that we have experienced are cost savings. Employing NTPEP eliminates the expense and inefficiency of us sending state inspectors around the country to conduct individual facility audits, and our suppliers who operate all over the country, but primarily Canada down to Florida and the East Coast, Virginia, North Carolina, South Carolina, Georgia, over as far west as Utah and Texas. So not sending people to all these sites really does save us both with the expense and the time of sending auditors out there on our own. And from a consistency standpoint, NTPEP provides a collective experienced and knowledgeable group of auditors, so we don't have to train our own folks. We can just rely on SARC and the crowd there at NTPEP to go in and do an audit that is a quality, consistent one year after year. And that way, our suppliers have a consistent audit, we get a consistent audit, and they also can give us their collective ideas back to us through the audit program. Using NTPEP's resources, samples are obtained by the same group of auditors and sent to a central laboratory that is doing testing for everyone. So we have a very uniform program there with the sampling and testing. And the producers only have one person coming in an audit per year instead of multiple states. So they get the benefit of less disruption to the plant and one set of numbers that they can rely on and that we can rely on at the state level. Communication with industry through NTPEP, that allows folks to come in from industry groups and talk during the NTPEP meetings and help us understand what they're doing. And we hear from more than one state supplier, more than one state. We get a good look from the auditors. So it allows everyone to participate in the technical committees and the audit programs. And that gives our industry folks vital information and working knowledge to help us create the work plans that state and industry are utilizing. Emergency acceptance. This is one that's quite timely for us since we're looking at a hurricane rolling up the East Coast right now. But whenever we do have an emergency, we can rely on the data and DataMine, the NTPEP audits to allow us to accept and review the supplier's material without us having to go out and do our own audits. So that will expedite repair and recovery processes for us. And as mentioned, each state has their own product listings, but you can streamline putting data in them, reviewing materials, because you can look at what NTPEP has done and see that data on DataMine. And we can trust the reliable independent results from NTPEP. So once again, we're streamlining our vetting processes. Some hurdles. Industry. Most of our suppliers are used to having states come in and do audits by themselves individually and at no charge to the industry folks, to the producers. And with NTPEP, there's more documentation for them and there's an audit fee that they have to pay. So there's a little kickback from them on having to do that. But at the end of the day, that new documentation and processes and cost to them allows them to have a singular audit, and that reduces disruption in paperwork and effort by them. So whereas it's new processes and documentation and the cost, it's not things that seem to be too onerous once you get into it. So on the agency side, we've had to learn that to trust and rely on NTPEP as well, because you've got folks that are used to doing things the old way and have been told that they're the last bastion of quality. So getting them to learn that this is a quality program from a group of folks that have been vetted and understand and know what the state needs are is a slight hurdle, but once you overcome that lack of confidence, you stop duplicating things, you become more efficient, and that allows us to overcome our current staffing shortages, budget problems, and all the demands we've got from our growing transportation infrastructure. So one of the big takes, and Sark hit on this as well as Matt, is that NTPEP is providing us with data, but NTPEP does not approve the producers or the suppliers. Those decisions still remain with us, the individual states. It just allows us to set our own requirements, tell the industry what we need of them. The industry folks are providing data and access to the auditors and participating in the program, and we're using that data and that participation to approve them on our case. And what NTPEP has done is it's giving us a established auditing and testing protocol across the board, especially with some of the new materials that we were not able to cover ourselves or didn't really understand. So that has greatly helped us, and we'll see on our next slide a list of the programs that we've been using in North Carolina and are quite reliant on NTPEP now. So as you see here, we're requiring a bunch of them, and for PVC pipe, we're allowing either NTPEP or sometimes certifications from other groups to the use of the material for utility work where we're satisfying individual utility companies. But by and large, we have found the NTPEP program to be extraordinarily useful, a great time saver for us, and a great way to enhance our communication with producers. So I'll turn it over to Steve to discuss Alabama's.
Hi, this is my name's Stephen Ingram, the Alabama Department of Transportation. I currently serve the department as the Deputy State Materials and Test Engineer. Back in 2009, I was promoted to Testing Engineer without July 2009. In August of 2009, the State Materials and Test Engineer at the time had been to what was then AASHTO Subcommittee on Materials, now AASHTO Comp. And he came back from the meeting, called me to his office, said, any product that we can use NTPEP testing to populate a approved list or a source list, we want to incorporate that into the procedure. So I go back to my office, sit down with my staff, and we begin using NTPEP data in as many ways as we can to populate those lists. The AudIT uses the audit program for both approved source lists and approved products lists, but what I'm mainly going to talk about today is the audit program, where we utilize the audit program to populate approved source lists. We don't necessarily look at the test data from the audit program, but we require on multiple lists that we maintain for a producer to remain what we term NTPEP compliant, meaning they go through the initial audit, go through all the steps to become, as I said, to pass the audit, the post-audit program, addressing any concerns. And then we consider them NTPEP compliant as long as they remain on the schedule and are paid for their next audit the following year, basically allowing them to have be on the list more than 12 months without an audit, because the way the schedule falls, often they may not be able to have an audit exactly at 12 months. So we consider NTPEP compliant being in the NTPEP queue for their next audit. We have not replaced our testing of those products with the audit program. We still test. In this case today, we're going to talk about steel reinforcement. We still have the capability and test steel. We also accept it on with certified test reports, but we do have the capability to test. Other programs that we test materials, I'll just use bearing pads. We test the pads, but we will occasionally get a pad in that's too large to test, so we will we kind of use the NTPEP audit program as a security blanket. Can we back up one slide? This is section 835 of the Audit specification, standard specifications. If you'll notice, there highlighted is list I-12. List I-12 is the Audit's deformed and plain steel bar producing mills. This tells when an inspector opens up the specification, looks at it, says it's got to come from list I-12. So next slide there is actually our parts of our procedure to be placed on I-12. Note in section 6 of this procedure, we tell them to contact AASHTO NTPEP to get them to schedule the audit program. And then in 7.4, we talk about participation and successfully complete an annual NTPEP audit and furnish us, the department, with the final copy of the report. The producer still has to submit that material to the product evaluation board and be approved by the board to be added to the list, but that's typically a formality once they go through the audit program. Next, you'll note is this is from our audit testing manual. This is where our inspectors on the project go to a table to see what they need to sample, what they need to be collecting on the project to approve a material for payment. Note, once again, we have list I-12 highlighted. Verify that reinforcing bars were manufactured in an approved steel mill listed on I-12. So when the paperwork gets there, they collect the certified test reports and then verify that source is listed on I-12 before payment is issued to a producer or to a contractor on the job. And that's kind of how Alabama ties the QPL to project sampling and testing and acceptance. Go ahead, Heather.
Oh, thanks, Steve. Yes, Heather Hall, serving as Tennessee's Materials and Test Division Director, more affectionately known to most states as a State Materials Engineer. TDOT has been heavily involved in all aspects of the NTPEP program, and particularly the audit program from the beginning, just as North Carolina and Alabama have talked about. We participate specifically here by, we utilize the program across the board, pulling samples and shadowing audits as we can. I just would appreciate the time today. I want to share some information about how the audit program is integrated into our TDOT specs and how we use approved producer lists. So TDOT currently uses all of the available audit programs, and we're already have big plans to incorporate the Portland Blend and Cement program when that's on board and up and running soon. And next we'll see that how we use these available audit programs to populate our approved producer list. Here's just a snippet from our website. You can see we break down our producer list by product type. We have different categories shown there. As an example, we see corrugated metal pipe down there based on the C&P program. And all of them are listed individually like that. Contractors must use these approved producer lists when they select products to use on TDOT projects. So they cannot use a product from a producer that's not approved on this list. And if you do not use approved producer lists in your program, I really encourage you to think about the benefit of having something like this in place. By having pre-approved producers, we really have more confidence that we're going to receive a quality product that meets specifications. And based on the NTPEP audit program, and the standard practice shown here, we can see, we can know that those manufacturers, those producers are capable of making quality products. So the TDOT producers list or approved producers list is found on our materials and test division website. So we also provide in kind of two different formats, but we provide the producer list map. You can see a little snippet of it there. So basically all those little dots are different approved producers. They're color coded by product type. You can also use the producer list map user guide there, and it'll help you understand how to narrow your search down to a particular product or what specific item you're looking for. The kind of meat and potatoes of it is the producer list report. It shows a query. You can search by product type, you can search by product and state or by region. Very, very user-friendly way to drill down to exactly the information you're looking for. So just as an example, we'll use here concrete reinforcement, which includes the use of steel bars, pre-stressing strands, and the welded wire mesh. So the producers have to successfully fulfill the requirements as described in the approval procedure document, as well as any SOPs or specifications that TDOT has. So the approval procedure document accompanies each producer list. It describes specifically how a producer gets approved and becomes listed on the producer list. It goes through every specification and every requirement that they have to meet to be listed. So here you can see that we have listed the NTPEP audit program in that procedure document. So before we add anyone to the producer list, TDOT's going to review the NTPEP audit report along with all the corrective actions. And in order to remain on our producer list, kind of like Steve was talking about, the manufacturer must submit for a NTPEP audit annually. We also require the compliance authentication certificate, and we'll keep those on file. So once all that's completed and they've met all those requirements, we will then list them on our producer list. And this is just a screenshot of what that might look like. And that's what the producer list report that I mentioned earlier from the query will show. Then the producers will, the contractors will utilize those reports, as I mentioned earlier, those producer lists to choose products to incorporate into TDOT projects. Those products must be listed on the approved products list. As mentioned here, TDOT has implemented all of the audit programs. And I want to show you a little bit, or talk a little bit next about the really ROI that we get, our return on investment. So currently we have over 80 facilities that are on our producer list that are audited through the NTPEP program. And it, just as others have mentioned, it would be impossible for us to do that on our own. We just don't have the staff and the money, the travel, and all the things that we mentioned before. Just makes that really impractical for any state, I think, to do on their own. And it would, I heard some mention that they're concerned with pushback from industry and not being agreeable to participating in the program. But we have been a NTPEP state for a long time, and industry doing business in Tennessee, you're really aware that we utilize all the NTPEP program services, and that really makes it easier for us to adopt new programs. So maybe it's a little difficult in the beginning, but once you get that procedure, NTPEP in your procedures, people expect it and they're not surprised, and you get that pushback kind of goes away. The annual contribution that covers all the NTPEP, you get technical committees, the audit program, the upcubed, that really all of that has significantly strengthened our materials acceptance program in Tennessee. And we feel it's a very small price to pay for all of the benefits that we receive from these programs. So see, really, it's a win-win. I would encourage you all, if you're not using the programs, to take a look at it, because I think really it would be a win-win for you all as well. If anybody is interested in any of our procedure documents or how we've incorporated that into our specifications, we'd be happy to share anytime. But thanks for giving me a few minutes.
All right, a big thank you to Cabell, Stephen, and Heather for all that information. And hopefully some of that information resonates with those on the webinar today. Before I wrap a few things up here, I mentioned earlier to use the chat if you had some questions. If you can actually use the Q&A button at the bottom of your screen there, you can ask questions and we'll get to those here in a second. But as you can see, another big benefit to NTPEP and participating in either these webinars or our quarterly calls for each technical committee or our annual meeting is the peer collaboration between states, in addition to that collaboration with industry. And I'd like to go through and highlight some other webinars that we have coming up here in the next few months. But if you have any questions about any of the information on this presentation or any audit program information that you don't get answered